Once again, welcome. Good afternoon. Adam Fitzgerald, host of the Darkened Hour. Gentlemen, introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Nelson Martins, aka DJ Thermal Detonator, host of Truther TV, 9/11 Skeptics versus Truth, and other things.
I am Ed Brotherton, aka Ed Brotherton, and formerly the head up of We Are Change LA, and yeah, and
So
now
we're
I'm
just here basically going to go over the Jason Bermas video that he made. I did a response video, it was short, and I wanted to keep it short and sweet, where I gave my own personal thoughts on part of the video. But I did want to say that I wanted to do a little bit more because there was other things that he did say that I didn't get to that Nelson reminded me of, and we both agreed that we should do it a proper uh, um, response video where we're going to share some thoughts, not so much as a criticism of Jason Bermas, even though he doesn't talk to me, he won't talk to Nelson. I'm hoping with this video, basically, he'll see that we're not the enemy. We're just basically want to basically talk with him about certain things that he's so close on, but yet he's further away on some of the things that we are going to basically disagree with, and for no reason at all, other than I think from his own, um, I think his own thoughts regarding hijackers and hijacked planes. He doesn't negate that the planes were hijacked, but he believes that there was a swap somewhere through. And I don't know why he's believing this because there's no evidence to support this. I mean, we saw the planes crash into the targets on 9/11 and the plane debris and DNA was found to site, which means that if there was a swap, all that plane debris is actually replaced and had to be put under tons of debris in broad daylight. And
Yeah,
nobody saw
why,
this.
why he would believe such things is look at his, most famous film, Loose Change. What does it open up with? Operation Northwoods.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's a problem. But like I said, I do want to make a proper response video regarding his latest video, which is, by the way, he didn't watch the TMZ special just to get people to understand that much. Not yet. I think he's going to make a video about that, and this is basically his thoughts about what was found on Flight 23. And I say, let's get on with it, right? So we could just fast forward.
And it's like,
Yeah.
man, I hate playing anything from TMZ because I'm scared they're going to go at. They always go after the. That's why we're not going to play the actual
Scared.
TMZ clip from this right here. I guess it's like an hour-long documentary. I've not watched it yet. I will. It may be available on Hulu or something like that. I saw when I looked it up, it looked like it was Hulu. Okay. None of this is new. I need to point that out. And
Didn't watch it, but
not
he
new,
knows it's not new.
not
But go ahead.
unique, and not unknown. It was already in the public arena. So when I hear this, I get a little upset.
I love the way it was done, first of all, because it's not long. You don't have to watch. Everything these days is too long.
Right.
Like, you can say it in an hour, and you do.
We did.
Right. And
Not
the
really.
premise, I don't know how anybody wasn't all over this for the last 20 years, but
Hi, Bill. Remember when you were throwing people out of your show real time when they would talk about Building 7? And you would say, yeah, you are a nutcase. Yeah, you are a kook.
I wonder who that was.
Okay. And look, in the past,
Yeah, I don't know who they threw out.
I have referred, especially in my younger days, referred to 9/11 being a quote unquote inside job. Now, by 2008, and that's a long time ago, I had made this film a follow up to Loose Change, trying to, I would say, answer some of my critics and say, you know what, let's not do the physical anomalies. Let's go with all the other stuff that points to a criminal operation. Let's try to make it as concise as possible. And let's see the debunkers come after this one. No one came after it. No one even really tried. They just tried to ignore it. And I guess it worked because here's Bill Maher How somebody wasn't all over this the last 20 years. Hi. Right here. We released the film. We're going to watch the warnings and war games section to really drive home that what they're about to talk about is not unique. So what are they talking about?
But
crazy.
That, what is it called? 9/11, the fifth plane?
The fifth
I mean,
plane.
that says it all. There was a fifth plane. There's no doubt in my mind after watching this that absolutely was the fifth plane. There's no law that says, no, we could only have 4 planes. No, there could have been 6.
There could have been 6.
But there definitely was this one.
So let's stop. Yeah. And it was reported on, but they were whispers. And it was also reported that weapons had been planted on other planes. So then a lot of people.
Well, you need to stop.
Yeah, I'll stop right there.
Yeah, because it's already drifting off from the whole Bill Maher thing, and he said a lot of things, that really doesn't make sense. He's just not in a position to be speaking about because for 20 years, no, Fabled Enemies came out in 2009, okay, but your film only covers the subject for 2 minutes. I have Fabled Enemies. I've sampled the section on Flight 23. And he just basically utilizes another documentary that had briefly covered Flight 23, which was a History Channel documentary called Grounded on 9/11. And with that, he only included a news archive from NBC News from the morning of September 13th, around 10 o'clock in the morning. Doesn't even mention the time of this news report, where it's briefly explaining some incident going on at JFK, and it's a very edited piece. And that's all he did. He didn't cover, the subject. And I'm also very skeptical of how much archives that he had for him to just pick this particular NBC part, which he will show towards the end of this presentation. But I don't want to get so much into that. I think what really needs to be addressed here is how he is handling that. It's Bill Maher, what's being skeptical, and the most important thing, he says 6th plane. Why isn't Jason even addressing that? I mean, if Bill Maher is really willing to go that far out there, but I think you guys need to speak a little bit here.
Yeah, no. Hey, listen. You bring up an interesting point regarding the additional. This goes into your hypothesis, which is actually backed by the evidence on September 13th about the additional second wave of attacks. And that's not you saying or me saying it. That's actually the evidence. In fact, the co-chair of the Joint House Inquiry, Bob Graham, actually even states that they knew about this second wave of attacks. Zacharias Moussaoui, just to use an example, Zacharias Moussaoui, who was the alleged 20th hijacker, he wasn't tortured, by the way. He was actually the only convicted terrorist involved with the 9/11 attacks that was tried in a federal court in Virginia. And he states under his own volition that he was involved with the initial attacks, but that he was regulated to the second wave of attacks. Why would he lie about that, right? Because there was supposed to be the second wave. Now, I'll admit, years ago, people like you, when you talked about these additional hijackings, I wish this would have been the forefront of your film in Loose Change, but I know it wasn't your film. That was Dylan Avery. This is the reason why you made Fabled Enemies, right? You went off on your own and made your own film. But it doesn't help the fact that you could admit that much, but you then delve into the swap theory, which I don't know why you need to do that, because like I said in the other video I made, I'll just quickly reiterate here. You're involving a lot more people in the public sector, not so much the private sector, but when you involve people in the FAA or the National Transportation Safety Board or with law enforcement at Pennsylvania, in Washington, D.C., in New York, you're involving thousands of people. In the Pentagon alone, it was approximated, it was 5,000 people. New York, it was well over 13,000. Can you imagine that each and every one of them, now let's just say 1/3 of them were involved in the collection of plane debris, Okay. You have to follow those people for the rest of their lives, listening to their phone calls every second of the day just to make sure that these people line up with the story that you're telling. And that this went on for 22 years. It's not plausible.
Hmm.
Why not allow the hijacked planes basically just crash where they are uninterfered with? And this way, you kill everybody on board. They can't say nothing. You basically don't have to put plane debris in broad daylight for everybody. You don't have to involve all these agencies that have to go along with the collection of evidence, the collection of DNA, and all this stuff. And now you don't involve a lot of people, only those in the higher up, maybe, right? The select few. And this is how you could keep a conspiracy going or whatever, right? But when you involve the public sector, too much at play here. And I think that's the problem with you, is that you give this swap theory, but yet you just have no evidence for it. Yet you can admit that there's hijackings. I think that's what drives me to, like, respond to you more than I would, like, say, Rebecca Roth or, Christopher Boland or something. They're lost, in my opinion. I don't think you're lost. I think you can be somebody who's much more an authority on 9/11 than, say, what the right public sees you as somebody who's inconsistent.
Yeah, somebody who's associated to Alex Jones.
Yeah, and that's another argument I don't want to really concentrate on. I hate Alex personally. I think
Yeah, I know. But we know that with the Sandy Hook stuff, everything. Okay, that's clear. That's who he's going to be always associated with, and that's going to be his legacy. So if he wants to succeed or go somewhere, you're going to have to distance yourself. Even more so than what Paul Joseph Watson did.
Yeah. Look, let me just finalize that thought and just piggyback on that. Is that you can and you will get more people for your Patreon account if you follow Alex Jones. He has a tremendously successful platform. And for those who tell the truth, they don't have such a massively successful platform. Now, I would submit to you that if you're going down this route, you sure will, in time, get your benefit from him, but you're not going to be taken seriously, not by the right people. And in order to do that, you need to tell the unfiltered truth. And that means that you may have to sacrifice those people that follow you. If you come right out and say, hey, listen, I was wrong about the swap theory, be prepared for probably about, this is my opinion, 2/3 of your followers to basically call you a shill and forever call you a government plant, and you to take a massive hit regarding finances of whatever you get from your Patreon account and followers.
Sure.
But you will be respected by the right people.
Well, his following has not been as huge as it people think it would be. There are other researchers that have bigger following to his. So even if he was to lose 2/3, you'd be getting rid of a lot of clutter, and you would be building a newer audience, basically.
Sure, but without the success in gaining finances from it.
Yeah,
right.
Which he's not even getting at this moment right now, anyways.
Oh, I don't know. I don't.
No. I mean, he's not. Well, I mean, his channel's not really huge. I mean, not in subscribers wise. I mean, people even Adam Green has got more followers and people paying attention to him live than this guy. And Green is not even focusing on 9/11. He doesn't even. He's still relatively new.
Yeah, I don't. Well, I don't. Could there be multiple factors at play? Like, is there an algorithm problem here? Like,
there is. He's complained about it. So is Luke Radowski. They've complained about that they're not getting the same, activity, responses.
Is that why Luke is on the Tim Pool show, to get some relevancy back?
Of course. We don't want to get into all these like specific.
Yeah, that's right. With
drama and all that stuff. But I mean, wait. But the most important thing here is this. He's opened up this whole thing. Okay. He hasn't watched the special. He's only read an article, and he sees a clip of Bill Maher. Okay. and he's upset about that. He has issues with Bill Maher for a long time. And what were those issues for? Throwing out truthers. What truthers? His show is not in New York. His show is in Los Angeles. Ed?
Yep.
So,
Change Los
so
Angeles,
who
folks,
was Jason
yeah.
talking about being Bill Maher throwing out truthers, Ed?
That was the catalyst that started the We Are Change group, where some groups from the 9/11 Truth .org or 9/11 Truth LA folks split off and went and basically started their own group. It didn't have a name at the time. They just kind of separated because they wanted to be more activists rather than just sit around talking about things. So they went off and Bill Maher made a comment on one of his shows about the 9/11 Truth community in general, and in response to that, they decided to do a response video about it, and then they found out that they were, they decided to go to a live taping of one of his shows as it was live, and then they would be able to confront him live on the air.
Yeah.
And as a result, that became a viral incident that made major news, and then those folks got kicked out of the Bill Maher show, and then that became the catalyst, which a lot of people started reaching out trying to find out who they were, because they actually liked what they did and were in supportive of it, and they realized that they had just created a monster and they needed to take responsibility for it. So they formed a Los Angeles chapter of We Are Change LA.
Yes, and
that's
it's not just
how it got started.
they had the YouTube channel starting already then. Katie, who else was it? They did little news sketch, little comic pieces making fun of Bill Maher because of the way he was denying Building 7 or no interest in it. He threw those people out. And this wasn't, remember, this wasn't 2 times. I mean, this wasn't once that this happened. This happened a second time. I believe the second time it may have just been Jeremy Roth-Gushel, and he got kicked out, and they threw him out, right?
That was the first time.
He was there the first incident. Okay, then they did.
I don't remember a second incident.
There was a second incident.
There was a second incident involving. Yeah. There was a second incident involving the what's his name? The attorney. The name. The attorney in Beverly Hills. They went to the event, book signing event, and a bunch of them got kicked out there. No, it was Bill. Was it
Richard Benvenista?
No. It was under Clinton.
Oh, okay. No, I mean he got kicked out a few times. I recall there was a second incident, and he didn't even get as far as to say something in the audience, But point being is that Bermas's issue here is because of that, because of Bill Maher, rejection, the truth, and I'm sure there's also the kind of thing is he's a likable guy, he's a funny guy. There's a lot of things we agree with, and I think it's also important to remember that Bill Maher was one of the first people that was targeted after 9/11, basically, just for some of the things that he was saying, about our foreign policy that provoked 9/11 in the first place. Mm-hmm. So this man is spot on. I mean, look, he's not really a big of a dick. I mean, you've seen a lot of people have seen the documentary Religious. You see how he handles all those people. But look how he interviewed David Icke, and it wasn't in there. It was an outtake in the bonuses of the DVD. But even the way he was able to handle that interview with David Icke, despite the problems that there is with David Icke, he was still somewhat respectable, and he let him explain, his world theory and what's going to happen in the future, So all of that happened, So to be upset about because he rejected Building 7, so what? Who died in Building 7?
Right.
Nobody. So you're gonna have this beef with him over that? Come on. And I don't believe Building 7 was demolition. I think the Twin Towers were. And if that was part of the ambush to focus on the Twin Towers, sure.
Right, but I think at that time, no, I think it was such an obvious it was to many of us an obvious understanding that seeing Building 7 collapse the way it did was the real question mark as to what really happened that day. So I
Yeah,
think that's why it had so much attention at that time,
yeah, it was a
regardless of who died in
conversational
it.
piece.
Right,
You know, it's,
exactly, and
you know,
it was
it's,
an important one at the time because it did raise some questions. But then once you raise those questions and you get answers to a certain degree, then you need to move on.
yes,
You know,
yes, yes, and but the thing here is this, you know, it's like, yeah, you know, they went on that show and Bill Maher already made issues, and I wish Adam would be able to have this link to show, and I've shown it in my film 6 on 77. But you know, the reason why Bill Maher, well, first of all, before I even say that, I'm just gonna let here you know, people know, and maybe Jason Bermas will get to hear this himself. But we had Tyrell Ventura show up to one of our We Are Change LA meetings, and I overheard him speaking to a group of us, and I think even Bruno, the former leader of We Are Change, was in the circle. But he was saying that when his father, Jesse Ventura, was on the Bill Maher show, that afterwards, Bill ran up to him because they were talking about conspiracies in 9/11 too. Bill Maher went up to him and said, "What's up with that Building 7?" So he was actually, you know, behind the scenes, he's actually skeptical. But like I said, Building 7 don't mean crap. But what does mean something is the fact that look at the history of Bill Maher as his show Politically Correct, how long it's been politically incorrect, how long it's been going on. Well, did you ever think that maybe Bill Maher knew somebody who died on 9/11? Well, he certainly did. He had, back in 1999, and probably other times before, he had Barbara Olson as one of his guests on the show. You know, Barbara, who died on Flight 77, her husband, Solicitor Ted Olson, the phone calls made, all of that. And what are you known for, Jason? Loose Change, the film that propagates that Barbara Olson didn't die at the Pentagon. So knowing Bill Maher, knowing that these popularized conspiracies out there, and that they're basically advocating hoaxes like that, what do you expect Bill Maher to say? And then be optimistic about this whole situation with Flight 23. So, Jason, you got to also look into that. You also need to remember there's a whole world whole line of history that's existed before you were ever born.
by the way, not they're talking about Flight 23, but you also got to remember there was also questions regarding Flight 133. There was questions about Flight 299, 1523, Flight 1060, Flight 956. All these there was some communication about possible bombs on board, et cetera, et cetera. So so Flight 23, yeah. But you gotta remember, this was what are we gonna do? Swap all those? If they were actually real targets and real
what were they doing? Hijacking
aircraft?
a missile?
Right. So it's there's a lot more planes and that's potentially involved in just Flight 23 as well, and the ones that we know about.
Yeah. So
you're gonna swap those out too? That's like, no.
Right. You're involving way more people than what there should be. It's much easier to just basically say for the NORAD at the highest levels to say, run some exercises, run some drills, and be out of the airspace in a certain sector. And because, they have, I'm using speculation here, that they know these attacks are coming at a specific time, right? And so for these planes not to interfere with the hijackings, well, that seems much more plausible than to basically say that all these planes somehow in midair are swapped, and then somehow that the plane debris at all three crash sites are planted in broad daylight in front of thousands of people. And for everyone that I mentioned previously to be involved in at some level, you stretch conspiracy into rationality, and that's where my cause for concern for you is. I don't consider you like a detractor or a shill or anything like that. I'm doing this in the hopes of reaching out to you and have a conversation, and you don't see us as detractors because you obviously do. You call me a troll, you block Nelson on Twitter, and you won't respond to us. And we've been trying to reach out to you for a while. Yeah, we made some critical videos over the time, especially me, but basically, I care about what's being out there, the truth, because I want to do something more. I'm not comfortable just doing videos. You know,
Yeah.
I do want to go to court and stuff. But if we don't have like a movement of people, no one's going to listen to me. I'm a nobody. You know,
Yeah.
no one's going to, care. But if we could get the right people involved with this movement, talk about the right stuff, hey, guess what? Now you build a movement, maybe we can basically get somewhere in court. And who knows? How
Yeah.
about a new commission of sorts that, people love to say that we'd love to get a new investigation. Well, how are you going to do that if you have a whole bunch of people that don't take you seriously?
Yeah. I mean, look, basically what we're revealing here is like, this is why the mainstream doesn't respect you.
Yeah,
Jason,
I don't know what else to say other than that. Oh, keep going.
Maniacs, or they're people that try, you know, the people that try to make their names off the backs of others by trying to destroy them instead of having an actual conversation, right?
But just let me add to that a little bit. We've been begging you, almost literally telling you, hey, listen, we'd love to talk with you. Why don't you have a conversation? I'll go on wherever. I don't care. I'm not the one doing this for money. I'm not doing this for show. I'm not doing this for a book or agenda or anything like that. I publish information daily. Nelson makes films, for God's sakes. We're trying to basically spread the actual conspiracies that are actually maligned by fringe conspiracy theorists and ignored by the press and government. Like I've always said, there's a fight on two fronts here. One's a fight against disinformation, which is a time waster, and one's a fight for information that we need to get from the federal government, declassified files and reports. And it doesn't help when we have to basically try and correct the mistakes made of the last 20 years. It's not an exaggeration. And Nelson and Ed, you guys have been in the fight far longer than I have. You were actually in the truth movement.
Mm-hmm.
And
You know, it's
these
funny.
people.
You know what's funny? You talked about how the government's not even acknowledging, the stuff we're doing, or at least you guys are doing. And however, I would say that they are actually acknowledging it, except they're not acknowledging it in a way that actually puts the evidence together the way you guys have done it. Because all the information you guys are getting is a lot of it's come from their own mouths, their own sources, their own information that they put out, but they're not putting it together the way you guys are.
Yeah.
They're not telling they're telling a different narrative. They're selling a different story. And what you guys have been able to do is find a different story that seems to be more accurate than the ones they're actually providing.
Yeah,
So,
everything you said here is correct. I want to get Nelson's points here. Look, the misconception is that because we believe in hijackers, hijacked planes, we agree with the official narrative. No, we do. Yes, there were hijacked and hijacked planes, but there was a lot more. Now, with the fifth plane on TMZ, guess what? They don't even have to be Al Qaeda. And if we go by Al Qaeda's own words saying, yeah, we selected 19 men, 19 fundamentalists, well, who the hell are these people? Well,
Yeah.
now you open up questioning. Nelson put something unbelievably surreal, and I was waiting to go to work when I saw this, when I heard his voice message. And he says, hey, remember that manual that Muhammad Atta made about washing the body or shaving the body clean? And in the film, the TMZ, and this is a great meticulous study here, Rich, Nelson, that you made, where the woman's wearing the burqa and it's actually a guy, and he
Yeah.
has hair on his hands. Well, if we go by what Muhammad Atta wrote the night before about shaving the body, this guy didn't get the manual, or this guy's not Al Qaeda. Who the hell are these people?
Yeah. If this is supposed to be a war on Islam, then grab all the Muslims. Take every single one that you're trying to blame to put on this conspiracy in 9/11 and do it. But the government didn't do that. Why? Why are they covering up extra hijackings? Why did they cover the Middle Eastern link in the OKC bombing?
I wonder. It has to give you a pause that, because there's such a huge backlash from people like Alex Jones and Fetzer and over these years. Oh, if you believe in hijackers, hijack planes, you go against this official narrative. To them, like I said before, the official narrative is basically 19 fundamentalists. They hate our freedoms and they hijack 4 planes and crash them into World Trade Center, Pentagon, and Shanksville. And I've always said, my God, there's so much more to this a narrative that the government put out. But the narrative is not false. It's not all true. It's incomplete. And basically, that's true because I've interviewed some of the people on my show, like Ken Williams and Anthony Schaefer and Eric Kleinsmith, Mark Rossini, and they've all said, and these are all FBI official whistleblowers, people that got in trouble. That's what a whistleblower is. Somebody who blew the whistle on the road agency
Yes.
and got in
Yeah.
trouble.
Yeah,
Not
that's
like
what a
Barbara
whistleblower
Honecker.
is. Yeah,
Not like
you
Barbara
get in
Honecker.
trouble.
She didn't get in trouble. Okay.
Yes.
And what happens is that they're telling on their own agency, hey, we didn't get all the information, or we weren't allowed to share the information to warn the public or warn the agencies, hey, there's hijackers inside the United States. We need to start monitoring these people. No, they were ordered either to destroy the information or not to share the information under threat of prosecution or even worse, right? And what happens here? You get an incomplete story because that information is not in the public sector. And guess what happens? 2 congressional inquiries. So you have the Joint House 9/11 Commission. And to the commission members, they're basically complaining. What do they say in 2003, 2004? Oh, we didn't get all the information that we would like to have seen. And that's coming from the co-chairs. That's Bob Graham, Thomas Keane, Porter Goss, Lee Hamilton. You say what you want about them personally. I'm not going to get into that. But one thing is for certain, they didn't get all the information. And they complained about it in their own reports. So for those out there that say, oh, the official narrative is such and such, no, it's an incomplete narrative. Because if you read the night, because people like Alex Jones and Jim Fetzer don't want you to read. They want you to believe what they're saying. Don't do that. Take what they're saying, look at what they're saying. Does it match up with the evidence? If it doesn't, you can't trust them as a worthy source. And that's all that me and Nelson and Ed have been trying for years to tell you is that, listen, you can't look at an investigation with a biased mindset and say, I know the government did 9/11. No, you have to look at a crime scene and basically prove, without a shadow of doubt, prove. Not speculate, not opine and say, oh, I know this. And no, you have to show that certain elements were either involved with the crime or not.
Yeah.
If they're not involved with the crime, no matter it's Israel, Saudi Arabia, United States, or a combination of all three, you have to admit that that's that. And don't add to it. Because what you're doing is basically creating 9/11 in your own image. Evidence is the only thing that matters. And, one who naively believes that there's a sense of justice in all this, but if I don't believe that, then I don't even what am I doing here?
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
So
So what's the point of exposing? You're trying to create solutions here too. I mean,
correct.
They'll say, well, Jason, you don't believe this, so you question what happened at Shanksville or the Pentagon. So they found the DNA of such and such a hijacker here without them actually being on the plane. Then there is no case for that person. That's not true. I'm not the one who said they found the DNA or was accusing these people. And by the way, the people they've accused, for instance, Khalid al-Mihdhar is a big one, because Khalid al-Mihdhar allegedly, according to James Woods, and you'll see him allude to that in this previous clip, because again, all the stuff we're going to talk about is open source information. Open source information, okay? And now, again, 20 plus years, we're learning about the 5th plane. There's a lot more than just the 5th plane, because what you did have is you appeared to have live hijacks. You had concurrent drills, okay? Then you had phantoms. And the phantoms appeared to be hijacked aircraft. You also had aircraft in the air that were reported to have explosives on them that were then landed that did not.
yeah.
That did not have hijackers on them either.
Well,
Now, what's real
Right.
But you can stop right there. Okay, well, why did the commission report come? Boil it down to box cutters. If there are reports of bombs and all that, why is that there? For him to cherry pick what is the cover up. If this is all scripted and all pre-made and all going to be a set narrative, we should not have any anomalous reporting.
I'm glad you brought this up, Nelson, because I'm going to play this clip. This was the clip that me and Nelson basically responded to. Before this, you were lost in the woods with me anyway. I can't speak for Nelson here or Ed. All right, I'm only speaking for myself. I knew who you were, and I know what you've done, and I was critical of Loose Change, a heavy critic. But I noticed that you were just a producer. You were not the film's director, and you basically just came on later or something like that. Now, you came on the scene for me recently when you did this interview with McDermott, and I'll play it.
Hey, all the evidence shows whatever happened there, something was blown out of the sky.
They were not. The bodies were not intact. It was
Well,
very-
again, man, I'm going to say it. There's not a time in history that a jet goes down in an open field and you may have, people that don't have heads or are badly burned. You got the body, bro. You got maybe a torso was ripped. It's not like they're looking for fragments and they're not on the scene. If you could point to one other commercial plane crash where anybody who is a primary investigator and shows up, and we've showed multiple, says there's no bodies and no evidence of a plane, I will not only shake your hand, I will stop showing people those clips.
And guess what happened? Me and Nelson actually did our own project, and we responded to you. And we gave two different examples. And when we did this, you basically blocked him, and you called me a troll. And not only that, you went on Reed Coverdale's show, and this was, I think, 2 years ago. This McDermott, I think, was 3 years ago.
Mhm.
Mine, a year or I'm off a
Yeah,
year.
yeah, you're right. No, you're right. You're right.
Okay. So and you basically said that you'll welcome any challenge whatsoever. When we did this and we showed you the clips, that's how you treated us. We didn't treat you like I didn't, I was only critical of Loose Change, not to you. But when you did that, I still extended an olive branch. I made a video on YouTube too. It's still up there. But then you basically just maligned us or ignored us altogether. And then you went on to basically say, I'm open to all challenges. No, Jason, look, I know damn well you saw these videos because I even shared it with you in private message on Twitter because you didn't block me then. And then you didn't even respond. And then later, I think it was last year, Nelson, we went on Ricky Veranda's show. We were invited.
Yeah. No, it was 2 years ago. That was for the 19-year anniversary. It was on the same time. Yeah.
And you basically came on, and when Nelson went to speak, you left because you didn't want to hear from us. And I'll still say it: you are not the enemy here. You never were. I'm not even a detractor. We're trying to reach out and talk with you because I think, from my perspective, you're still worth saving because you're right there. You're right there. You talk about other things that even self-professed experts of 9/11 claim that they're for the truth. Well, they're not. I think, in my opinion, and Nelson, I'd like to get your thoughts here, Ed, afterwards. I think, I could be wrong, I think you're tired of the same old repetitious, non-responsive attitude of the 9/11 truth, and you're just basically trying to hang on to people who are alleged to be truthers like Alex Jones when they're not, because you may think that we might be critical of you or we basically won't accept you as is. I will. Nelson, Ed, what are your thoughts?
As far as
Sure.
as far as what him being bored with this, or
Yeah. What's your response with Jason overall with 9/11?
I would probably imagine. I mean, Ed even talks about this too. It's just like you'd have. I mean, if you're stuck in that narrative, you must be starved for information because you must be stuck. I mean, endless trails. I mean, trails to dead ends. I mean, You can't escape out of that. You're stuck in that market, into that niche. And Jones even knows it's a market of conspiracy. Richard Gage calls it his brand of conspiracy. There's no brand of truth. There's no brand of truth. There's just truth. And we've even ruined that word already. It means nothing now. Now we have to stick with facts. We can't even say truth. Ed?
I agree 100%. I think what happens is when you build up your public personality to such a degree that and you build it on a foundation that is flimsy at best, you over time you have a very difficult it becomes more and more difficult to keep your balance on that flimsy foundation. And so it's and I think you're right, he is starving for more information, but I don't know if he's willing to do the work to get it.
I think he is. He does.
But you
do a
showed
little
it. But
bit
you
more.
showed it to him, and he rejected it.
Well, I think maybe because I'll have to blame myself here because I was a little bit combative toward him after the McDermott video, and
But now the TMZ thing means something different. Now now it's a game changer.
yeah,
Okay.
this is what Nelson and I think really
We're dealing with a game change right now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what we're doing.
In other words, you think he's opening the door.
He has to. This is what me and Nelson were talking about yesterday. So we think that with this new video by TMZ of all people, basically does open up the door to saying, hey, wait a minute, this goes against this official narrative, or it goes against the the other fringe theories that are out there, and it basically questions that narrative. Who are these people? Where'd they come from? How'd they get on the plane? To me, that fifth plane TMZ thing answered some of the questions I wanted answered for years.
And then the things are also going on geopolitically with Saudi Arabia too.
Correct. Save that. Let's just save that for example. The latch plane to get on the bottom. I mean, that to me, like, this leads to the theories of Ziad Jarrah, Flight 93 and stuff.
Adam, you're talking about, like, he started off saying this is not new information. We're telling you right now, oh my God, it's new information.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
It's new to the truth community, that's for sure.
Oh my God, Ed, I can't disagree with that. It's so illuminating.
Yeah.
Right.
It may have been sitting there forever.
Yeah.
It may have been sitting there since September 12th, 2001.
Right.
But yeah, but who's been acting on it?
Right.
Very few.
Who's been acting on it? Right.
Yeah. I pushed me and Adam have pushed it further because
we
looked at the news reports and we know about September 13th, and that's good. Let me save that for later.
Yeah.
But we've stretched it further than you was trying to say, like, criticizing Bill Maher. No one's researched this for 20 years, and you're raising your hand. No, you only did 2 minutes, dude. I did it in 6 hours. Even though I counted, I took every plane. I didn't just
you did it in 6 hours. That was the culmination of your research. But how long did it take you to do the research on it?
Oh my God, years.
Right. Yeah, years. It's like you spent years on it.
Yeah, I had 2 versions. I only did a 3-hour version because I could only get to September 15th. I had to do the rest of the week.
Right. So when Bill Maher says you can explain everything in an hour, that's why I was like, no, you can't.
You can't.
And by the way, just to piggyback again off Nelson, 6 hours is not him talking. It's all news vedets, of showing the chronological order.
Yep.
Hey, it was here in this plane, this city, this plane, right on through. Easy for the eyes, easy to digest. Even though, yes, 6 hours, but it shows an enormous amount of effort and work in regarding to get all the potential possibilities. Look at how many planes could have been hijacked.
Cover up of it's huge.
The massive, the amount of cover up here.
Nothing. Ground zero cover up is nothing in 9/11.
Nothing in the whole scheme of things.
Yes.
Just the scheme of things.
It's almost like you have imagine a crime, and you have this nice little house in suburbs, and there was a mass murder going on inside the house. and all the attention's on that mass murder.
Hmm.
How this could happen? Who did it? Blah blah blah. Oh, here's potential suspects. Meanwhile, the person inside that house, one of the people inside that house, was connected to another thing over here where another crime was going on that was related, that was bigger than the actual mass murder happened in the house, but nobody's paying attention to that house, that crime.
Yes.
Because this crime over here is covering up the cover up happening
Right.
over here, you know.
That's a fantastic analogy. Yeah.
That's
No, there
kind of
is.
what's happening.
There's other ways too of saying that. Yeah,
Yeah. That's a great analogy, by the way.
Really
it is great. It
significant
is.
about United 23, and it makes you question the whole entire thing, and it should. You know, so you should be looking at the hijackers. You should be looking at their military ties. You should be looking at the fact that they were at military schools naming their addresses as those.
Yeah, stop.
All right. Yeah.
Ali
Nelson,
Mohammed. Ali
talk-
Mohammed. Ali Mohammed was in the military, and then after 9/11, you have Ali. What was his name? Hassan or the Fort Hood shooter? What's his name?
Oh, God's sakes.
Isn't it Hassan or Ali? Isn't it?
Yes. I
Is it
forgot.
Ali Hassan? Right.
I
So,
have to cheat. It's
Big
Nadal
deal.
Hassan. Nadal
Yeah.
Hassan.
yeah.
Nadal, yeah. Nadal of all people.
Yeah.
Big
Yeah,
deal.
well, right.
Any relation?
And
Yeah. I mean, he's talking about hijackers using the addresses on bases. I'm telling you of ones that actually get into the military and do basic training. Okay.
Your address is going to be on a base.
Whoopie doo.
Yeah.
Mine
Mine was-
just
I
to,
can tell you what mine is.
and just to add to that, Newsweek actually talked about this and said, you could see here, alleged hijackers may have trained at U.S. bases. Let me explain what this is about, actually, because it does talk about Saeed Al-Ghamdi, okay? Saeed Al-Ghamdi listed his address to a register at 98 with a 98 Oldsmobile and used it again to register his second vehicle, and he gave the address of this barracks. But by the way, just to let you know about this, is that Arabs, and I study Arab culture, is that Arabs have similar sounding names. And this was a huge, and I don't want to get into this because Nelson covers this extensively, about how the hijackers are alive and they use these different names. For example, there's a Abdulaziz Al-Omari, who's a hijacker on Flight 11. Remember the name, Abdulaziz Al-Omari. Nelson, deserves all the credit here because it was brought to my attention that there was an Abdulaziz Rahman Al-Omari who was actually a Saudi Arabian pilot. And I know he's done this memes on Twitter and Facebook for years. He actually has this great meme. It's the best meme, 9/11. To me, it's because it's informative. It shows a picture of Abdulaziz Al-Omari and Abdulaziz Rahman Al-Omari, and it shows a distinct difference. That's the guy who called BBC and said, hey, my name is Abdulaziz Al-Omari, but his name is Abdulaziz Rahman Al-Omari.
Yeah. There were two Al-Omaris for one Al-Omari.
Right.
And there may have even been a third with a slight alternation.
And guess who spread that rumor? Alex Jones and Jim Fetzer. That's who did this. Because Jim Fetzer and Alex Jones went on, Nelson correct me.
And Barbara Honegger is still repeating it to this day.
That's right. In 2004 or 2006, they had a conference. It's on C-SPAN, and Alex Jones is there, and Jim Fetzer's there, and I think there was this conference of truthers. And this is the big Jim Fetzer clip, the 10 questions regarding the hijackers, and he used this, and Alex Jones is in the background shaking. Yes, yeah, that's right. No, that's the misconception. And so people don't look into the hijackers' backgrounds. They say, oh, these guys are still alive. Now, just imagine, the hijackers are still alive. How come no one's ever talked to one?
That's right.
How come the Truth Movement didn't go to Saudi Arabia just to say, hey, why not? Because the BBC basically says in the article that these were people with similar sounding names to the hijackers. But that's not what Jones and Fetzer told you. They said, no, the hijackers are still alive. So getting back to my point about Saeed Al-Ghamdi was a person at this Pensacola Army base, but it was a different Saeed Al-Ghamdi. Saeed Al-Ghamdi in 1998 would have been 16 years old. It can't be him because he died. He was, I think, 22, 2001. So How could he have gotten a driver's license? He couldn't have. How could he have gotten a passport? He couldn't have. How could he have gotten a visa? He couldn't have. So no, Jason, that's where I disagree regarding about them training at military schools. But for them giving addresses, they went to what's it called? I'm sorry, they went to English language schools.
Yeah, in Monterey. I've been to that base because I had somebody
you?
with a new friend of mine who was in the army was there.
Oh,
The
wow.
language,
Okay.
yeah, the language school, yeah.
Schools that they were in. Look at the connection to Maxwell Air Force Base, to Rudy Decker's.
Well, I mean, hey, Rudy Decker's is true. Yeah, keep going.
Rudy Decker. I mean, that's a whole different part.
Yeah, but that's not his research. That's all Hopsicker, and that's
Yeah.
where he, you know.
Yeah. Oh, Hopsicker's. What's the name of that book?
Venus Flying Circus.
Yeah. I love the little short film he did.
Yeah.
Good research.
CIA called on him by his neighbor, Deborah Albrighton.
That's right.
Okay. And nothing's done. Why is that? Why is that?
Nelson, you have that news
These are
clip
big
too.
questions. So that's really going to be the opener. We're going to go to Fabled Enemies. We're going to go to this part called Warnings and War Games.
Please.
And this is really going to show you, in my opinion, this shows 100% how the people on the inside of the United States that were a part of this, and there were people on the inside of the United States that were a part of this, use the drills not only to
See, I hate to nitpick, but words mean everything to me. When you say the United States are part of this, what do you mean? Because if you're going to say that the United States is part of the 9/11 operation, you're making a very weighty charge.
Mhm.
And you know, like you could say this is my fault, or this is a slight on me. I'm completely meticulous, like I'm anal with certain things, because I'm thinking of it like a courtroom, not like a hobbyist. I'm thinking of it like an investigator, not like somebody who's off the cuff and just doing it for clicks. Every word that you say means something. So when you make that charge, like, because people are watching you, Jason. You have thousands of people that watch you. You're a relatively successful platform, and people hang on to what you have to say because they consider you an authority, right? So when you say that they're part of something, you have to be a little bit more specific. So in other words, what you're trying to do is not mislead your audience. Would I be wrong about that?
No, it's a major pet peeve of mine. When anytime anyone says, "Oh, the government did it," or "the government's this," "the government's that," the government is defined by our Constitution, and it cannot, by its very nature, do anything unconstitutional, illegal, et cetera, because the U.S. government operates by official constitutionally constituted acts.
Mm.
So anything outside of that no longer becomes the government. These are individuals acting on our own behalf.
Mhm.
And if you box it into the government did it, and you put a label on it like that,
Yeah.
you then allow permission to not look at who is actually you're talking about, and actually do the work needed to pinpoint specifically who is acting outside of the Constitution, who is acting outside of government, and under color of law, or maybe under color of authority, and thereby eliminating any possibility of putting any names and connections to the event itself.
As a guide, basically.
Yeah.
It's about specifics here, and that's all I'm interested in. I don't care about vague terms, and I hear from Alex Jones all the time. New World Order, Illuminati means nothing to me.
Deep state.
Yeah, deep state, stuff like that. We've been inundated in the truth movement for years with this, meaningless slogans.
Yes, it's
I want more.
generalizations.
Yeah, I want more. I want specifics because I want to hold people accountable.
Yeah, it's
That's
a
how-
feeling. I don't want to hear about feelings.
Yes, I don't want. Right, I don't want to hear about feelings. I don't want to hear about, I'll play the small violin. No, but I want more. We all want more. It's the only way we're going to get ahead. You know, if you know, this is the reason why Fox News back in 2005 and 6 interviewed Kevin Barrett. This is the reason why MSNBC interviewed Morgan Reynolds. Why? Because it showed the 9/11 Truth Movement as nothing more than a bunch of, you know,
Quacks.
irrational quacks. And guess what happened? Now the media doesn't even talk to you. They did for you, but you had Dylan Avery and you had Corey Rowe, and you talked about loose change and anomalies that basically talked about that were repeated by Thierry Mason and still Barbara Honegger to this very day. But you didn't talk about this stuff because you know, when you say, oh, we knew about this stuff for years. Why didn't you do that when you had ABC News right in front of you? No, you brought up about Operation Northwoods. You brought up the Pentagon issue, and you had your chance, right? You weren't there, but Dylan Avery and Corey Rowe, they were there, and they had their chance. Basically, you didn't repeat this stuff. You only did it in Fabled Enemies, but through, you know, because people still remember you with Loose Change. You have to dissociate from that completely and say we got it wrong.
Yeah.
Once
Mike
you do
Rivero
that-
should take a lot of credit for Fabled Enemies anyways, too.
Right. But this is where he has to make the look, you're not going to get much in way of favor. A lot of people are going to call you names and call you a, you know, you're a sellout. Who cares? Like Nelson said, that's dead weight. And you're carrying that around for years. That's why I happen to think that
that's defamation. That's the defamation narrative. You want to be part of that 1.5?
Right. Well, does he want, like, I can't, I'm not him. So well, this is the reason why we're doing a video. We're trying to reach out to you.
Yeah.
That's all. So
Help facilitate the attacks, okay, but also to move individuals within intelligence and law enforcement agencies that were not, and plenty of them were not in on it, okay, and immobilize them from being on the scene and possibly being a whistleblower later on. That's how deep and dark it gets. So here we are again. TMZ broke the case, guys. United 23. No. And I mentioned this, the luggage that was left behind, right, with this United 23 case had all the same things that they magically found in Atta's luggage that didn't make it onto the first plane 11.
well, if that was this again, Nelson gets the credit here. If that was the case, then the person in the burqa would have shaved their arms and hands. Just like the other hijackers did. They did.
Yeah. And what we found out from the special was we didn't find bags. It wasn't even an issue of that. It's weapons found on a totally different plane. It's
Yes. This is how
TMZ are still trying to reduce that into one plane still. And I'm telling you, no, that's probably another plane. A second plane.
CNN even reported, and we have the articles, and basically report finding knives and box cutters on the backs of food trays in other planes in other cities.
Yeah. And other weapons. Greater
Paul
weapons.
Thompson wrote about this in the Terror Timeline.
Yeah, greater weapons than knives. Guns, and we've heard.
Guns. Bomb on one plane, September 13th. God's sakes.
And Al-Madar was supposedly on 11 in the summer before with several others, but he's not supposed to be there. That's according to James Woods. So many anomalies. And now that you know your government will straight up bald face lie to you, okay, lie to your ass without boom, a smile.
George Tenet did.
Look what they did the last several years. They think they were better 20 years ago? Oh, no. Oh, no. They might have put a little bit of a better face on it. But it was also the birth of the internet, of the actual true information age, where people
Stop right there for a second.
Yeah,
like the whole part where he talked about the government with bold-faced lie to you. He had a perfect opportunity right there to talk about, George Tenet and the hearings and all that. That was a perfect opportunity to give a real example of an actual bold-faced lie that can be provable right there in the moment.
Boy, thank you, Ed. Yes.
And he missed the opportunity.
Man. And it's him lying before the joint house inquiry.
Yes.
committing perjury, not once, twice.
Right.
Twice. We didn't read the cable. That's one.
Mhm.
It was an information only cable. I know we didn't read that cable. 50 agents, 50 officers in the CIA's counterterrorism center. Not one, not two, 50
What, like
knew.
57 or something like that?
So I think it was 55, 57. I
Yeah.
don't remember. But over 50, all right, knew that Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, two known al-Qaeda agents, according to the CIA, were coming to the United States. They had dual U.S. visas. FBI read the cable. Doug Miller, who was an FBI agent out of New York, on loan to the CIA's Bin Laden Issue Station, codename Alex Station, went to write a draft report saying, hey, we got two known al-Qaeda operatives with links to the 1980s East Africa bombings and USS Cole, and we need to start monitoring these people. But they need the CIA permission. CIA doesn't give permission. That order came from the deputy chief of Alex Station, Tom Wilshire. And he told his liaison officer, Michelle Ann Casey, thank you, Ray Nowolewski and John Duffy. She told Mark Rossini, who's an associate of Doug Miller, also on loan from New York Counterterrorism Center, and told him, you're not allowed to share that cable without our information. We think the next attacks are in Southeast Asia. We'll let the FBI know when they need to know. So they can't share this information. And it's 16 months later, so August 2001, and then later on when the 9/11 commissions happened, George Tenet goes before the commission, commits outright lies, basically says, nobody read that cable. Did the truth movement jump on it like Ed said? Not a peep. The only person who did talk about it, the only people were the following: Paul Thompson, Kevin Fenton, Ray Nowolewski and John Duffy, John Gold. Nobody else.
And other people in this room right now.
Yes. Now, recently, yeah. Now, no, nobody talks about this. No, because you know why? Because you don't read the 9/11, not you, Jason, but they don't read the 9/11 Commission report. They don't read the Joint House Inquiry, right? Because if you don't read anything, you don't know anything. And you can't give your thoughts on anything. All you have to do is say the official story is a lie, 9/11 Commission report is all a lie. So that's why you don't have to read anything and point out specifically what's a lie, what's a truth, or what not. You don't have to, in other words, what Ed and Nelson were saying previously, you don't do the work.
Yeah.
Now, Jason, you did. This is the reason why we're doing this video. You did. And you're right there. I still have hope for you. Like you're right there.
Yeah.
Only reason why we're reaching out to you.
I mean, did the 9/11 Commission report lie when they said they found no evidence of Saddam or Iraq involved in the 9/11 attacks?
Yes. Great example.
Because Bush didn't like that.
Right.
He profoundly made a big issue about that when the report came out. He was against it. But you guys only want to worry about the fucking buildings. But, you know.
It's such, when you guys talk about ground zero, and I'm not disrespectful because it's part of 9/11.
I know
But
it is.
Only, like I know somebody, I'm not going to use his name. Nelson and Ed know who I'm talking to. When you have somebody that invested and stays at ground zero and doesn't rise above the ashes and doesn't look at 9/11 in the respect it
Yes.
deserves, well, you're
Perfect
missing
metaphor.
out. You're missing out on so much more.
Those who say they will die on that hill.
Oh, man.
Go beyond the mainstream and start to explore what the evidence actually showed and not the talking points and the spin that was continually regurgitated via the networks, right? I might even play, because yesterday, if you stuck with us premium style, and by the way, I think it's over on my Twitter. There's 4 more episodes. Premium style, all free now at redvoicemedia.com. That's why you follow me at Jason Bermas on Twitter, and you can just go through, click them all. They're free. Yesterday's premium, I actually got a text from one of my buddies that was listening, and he said it was great. And look, I never know what's going to come across to the audience. I just do my thing. I talk about stories I think are important. I show evidence I think is important. Because 9/11 is the crux, right? To this day, our entire foreign and domestic policy is based on that terrorism.
Word.
You're a domestic terrorist. You're a Muslim terrorist. You're an Antifa terrorist. You're a white supremacist terrorist. Terror.
Let's stop.
And
Doesn't
the whole
he's so
Stop.
close.
But he's right. He's right. But
Yes.
Jason, those days are gone.
Yep.
You got Trump in office. Okay, things changed. There, we have to accept that now. It's 2023. Move on.
Al Qaeda is no longer a threat. We no longer have that religious fundamentalist terrorist threat. We've now re-entered the Cold War. This is how far gone we've gone from the 9/11 truth movement, right? We can't use this anymore. The terrorism threat is now us, the American people.
Yeah.
January 6th, I forgot who coined the term, was worse than 9/11.
Yeah. And how did the January 6th come about? How did the QAnon come about? Because of what? The result of cult conspiracies.
Thank you.
Yes. Not one of those people that were at January 6th. I would say 75% of them, I guarantee you, know that a third building fell on 9/11.
Yes.
They weren't there for that.
Those are the
A
people.
third building fell on 9/11.
You didn't know that?
Oh, nah.
Anyway, yeah, Nelson. Look, the people.
And the guy and your former boss happened to be one of the leaders, so you know.
Yeah, he just happens to be there with a bullhorn. Anyway, yeah, that's exactly right. The people who raided the Capitol are the very same people who helped to destroy the 9/11 truth movement. That's who the United States labels as terrorists. You, me, right? By default. And that's exactly like I said, you are right there. You know it. And guess who made that memorandum to change about what is labeled a terrorist or an enemy combatant? Well, it was in November 2001 when President Bush went on vacation and left Dick Cheney there to basically rewrite with White House legal counsel like David Attenborough, and John Yoo and Alberto Gonzalez, that's Cheney's lawyer, basically rewrote the Department of Justice memo saying that the president now is the sole authority on naming or labeling people enemy combatants, terrorists. Guess who he named as terrorists? You. Me.
Not the 1,000 people he had round up in jail at the New York Metro and everywhere else. Not those. Not when he was even asked. Not even when Ashcroft was asked on September 17th. You know, are you going to label these people, enemy combatants to hold them indefinitely? No.
And by the way, I'm glad you brought that up, because when Dick Cheney rewrote that memo with Bush's approval, basically he left out of the loop the Secretary of State, Colin Powell, the National Security Advisor, Condoleezza Rice, and the Attorney General, John Ashcroft. When they all found out, it was much too late, because surrounding Dick Cheney at the White House was legal counsel who rewrote the memo concerning that the president now has sole authority on labeling enemy combatants. One of the most important pieces of legislation written that was not brought up even by the 9/11 Truth Movement, which I'm not surprised, but also by the mainstream media. I wonder why. Because we're the terrorists. And guess what? 20 years later, who got arrested? All Americans on January 6th. They're overthrowing the government. Imagine a bunch of ragtag bunches who look like, straight out of the Tommy Wiseau film are gonna take over the government, right? Now, I disagree with the point that they went there because they overthrew an election. Now, if they would have went there on real pretenses, like saying, maybe these COVID lockdowns are draconian, or they're giving out too little on these stimulus checks, guess who you would have had on your side? Those idiots of the left, right? You would have had a combined movement where together you work together on a common cause to keep government honest. No, you alienated yourselves. You created further divide in the public sphere. And guess what happened? Now nobody takes you seriously. Same thing for the left. Keeps the divide growing and nobody takes you seriously, except for the United States government, who considers all of us the enemy. And until you get through your head, stop voting for left and right politics, because there's no such thing in the greater scheme of things. They're all in, when it comes to the more important issues like geopolitics and foreign lobbies like Israel or the Gulf. or giving more money to the CIA, the NSA, and the Pentagon, and giving more money to wars like Ukraine and Yemen. Well, guess what? Those legislations and proposals are voted unanimously. So there's never any left and right paradigm here. No divisive issues. Only except when it comes to Social Security, healthcare, and stuff that it's internal. Then there's a left and right because it keeps you divided. That's the whole point. 9/11, the new movement for 9/11, if it's ever going to come, has to come from people like you, Jason Bermas, and ourselves, in admitting that we had information that wasn't at our disposal. We're trying to fight for and getting rid of the unnecessary, disinformation. But you're going to have to admit that much.
Point of that is to take away your constitutional rights, your due process. It's extremely frightening. And they've certainly played the long game with it. So yesterday we played Fort Detrick and biological warfare and, the old military reel, and then kind of the realization of what's actually happening and where it's happening. And believe me, they talk about that industry, being there. I believe it's in Franklin or whatever, in that community. But they are doing crazier things underground in black facilities and sites, and have been
What does that
since
mean?
World War II. 100%. We can't even imagine the horrors.
By the way, just to Ed Nelson, have you ever seen the video Jason Bermas did? Do you guys, Nelson knows this name. I think Ed, maybe Nico Haupt.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I've heard the name. I don't know.
He's one of the very first,
Yes.
real, total physical, no planar, hologram TV.
Yes, I know you're talking about.
Yeah.
Jason did a very good video. I saw this about Nico Haupt and this experiment that he did with the CIA, and involved this underground, and he has video of this. There's video of this. You ever seen it, Nelson?
No.
I will share that with you. And boy, that's something else. I thought that was a very good video by Jason.
Okay, we can't imagine some of the technologies. I'm going to talk about quantum computing today. I got a long list of stories that I do want to hit on top of this 9/11 issue, but this 9/11 issue obviously extremely important to me, because it's crazy to me that these guys can sit up there and act like nobody talked about this before. Information was available almost immediately, but there was one narrative to go down. You notice that narrative management, that great narrative that we all got the last several years? And 9/11 was much different in a sense, although there was a feeling of global outside of you being directly at New York City. Yes, your life was a little different. You weren't standing on stickers. You weren't putting on masks. You weren't asked to do all sorts of things on behalf of hate and lies and shut your business down. No. Instead, it was something you could direct at. Oh, they told me the guy with the funny hair and the hat there and the robe, he did it. Osama bin Laden, OBL, get him.
Hold on a minute here. Listen. I'm just going to share this one video. That's it. It's not long. I think it's seconds long and whatnot. And this is from I'm just going to play this short little video, where again, this is coming from their own mouths. Okay, from their own mouths. And I just wanted to hold on a minute here. I'm not saying that bin Laden, was the sole reason behind 9/11. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed pitched the idea to bin Laden, if we're going to believe his words, right? But this is all coming from their own words. And I just want to play this small one video where basically Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri is sitting next to bin Laden. These are not doubles. Listen to what he has to say.
أن هذا النصر العظيم الذي تحقق في الحقيقة يعود إلى فضل الله سبحانه وتعالى وحده، ليس بمهارة منا ولا حيلة ولا تفوق، إنما هو محض فضل الله سبحانه وتعالى. والله سبحانه وتعالى يختص برحمته من يشاء، والله سبحانه وتعالى ينظر في قلوب عباده فيصطفي منهم ما يكون أهلا لفضله ولرحمته ولنعمه. فهؤلاء الإخوة 19 الذين خرجوا وبذلوا وقدموا أرواحهم في سبيل الله، من الله سبحانه وتعالى عليهم بهذا الفتح الذي نتمتع به نحن الآن. والناظر في أحوال هؤلاء الإخوة يرى أنه يعني لا مقارنة بين قوة 19 رجلا وبين قوة أمريكا، ولا تناسب بين قوة 19 رجلا وبين الخسائر التي حدثت في أمريكا. ولكن اللجوء إلى الله سبحانه وتعالى والاستعانة به والتوكل عليه يفتح لك فتوحا أنت لا تعرفها. والله سبحانه وتعالى يدلك وييسر لك ويقويك ويمدك، بل ويدلك في نفسك على كنوز وعلى موارد وعلى قوة أنت.
That's from the media website. Al Qaeda runs a media website called As Sahab Media. Years ago, I downloaded these videos when you were able to. Now they're only archived on archive.org. But even, you know, when you go to archive.org, there's hardly anything left even. I got lucky. I downloaded these videos right away. But, you know, here you have, you know, a top email of Al Qaeda basically suggesting, asserting that, you know, these 19 brothers basically carried out these attacks. Now, bin Laden is also stating, you know, to Taysir Al-Awani of Al Jazeera about the attacks and how they benefited Al Qaeda greatly. And I have video with Ramzi bin al-Shib meeting with bin Laden in Afghanistan, and it's on Odyssey. Go watch that. Okay?
Well, the thing is, you got to understand the way Bermas is presenting that whole thing about, like, you got to give him this whole bin Laden narrative is really simple. Look at his age. I mean, how old he was when 9/11 happened, and look at the you know, look at the fact that he would have been like, you know, 14, 15, you know, when the East Africa embassy bombings happened. He wouldn't give a shit about that. Like, what the hell would he have known back then, you know? And, you know, from that point, maybe he wasn't really watching the news. So he didn't really hear this whole bin Laden hype. We heard this. I paid attention. I paid attention to the East Africa embassy bombing. I mean, I was in my mid-20s already, you know? And, you know, I thought it was freaky. And yeah, that's when I started hearing about him. So when 9/11 happened, I knew this is like, well, not that I believe that he completely masterminded or, you know, I knew that was the person to blame already automatically, because he had already been this threat told for us for like 3 years already. He obviously didn't.
And we're not saying that, you know, bin Laden and Al Qaeda is the sole blamer of 9/11, but this is something I shared. Now, there was a late researcher, Michael Collins Piper, that basically said that, and this is something I totally agree with, is that 9/11 was an Arab plot, but the Israelis and Americans got wind of the plot and manipulated it. Well, that's my whole thesis, is that 9/11 was created by Khalid Sheikh Mohammed bin Laden and Al Qaeda. They're already doing the work. Now, if you go back, don't look at Northwoods, Jason. Look at Bajinka, something that you barely ever mentioned, if at all.
Even when he samples Philippine Colonel
Yes,
Rodolfo Manzola, even though he brings that up and then he doesn't, you know, it's like,
yes,
well, yeah, the warning signs are there. Like, yeah, NORAD trains because they have to train against Bojinka.
Yes, I couldn't believe he played those clips, right? And that comes up in this video.
Yeah,
I was in
that's
shock.
why we don't really need to go over that part, really.
Yeah, because anyway, like outside of us, nobody really talks about this stuff, right? Ben and Eric do. I mean, the kids at Project New American Century, but they're like, you know, they're new. But back in the Truth Movement days, nobody was talking about Pachinko, right? But huge, right? If you have somebody who's willing to do the heavy lifting, all you need to do is make sure that they do the work and it's not interfered with.
Yeah.
That's what I believe in. CIA, NSA, listening to the phone calls of these people, okay? Oh, wait a minute. They're talking about these attacks. They're using these specifics. They're using planes as weapons. Let's make sure that these planes actually get off the ground and hit where their targets is. Is that so much as an irrational speculation? No, I don't think so, because I think that's exactly what happened. Now, can I prove it? No, I don't have like documentation for it. But what we do have in the historical record is that you have the NSA and the CIA listening to these phone calls of Bin Laden and a house in Yemen, which was an Al Qaeda communications hub. What do you think Al Qaeda was talking about in those phones? They're not going to be like us, talk about trivial, mundane things in life. These are serious men that want to commit attacks.
Yeah.
And if you already have 5 years prior, Bajinka's 5 years prior, 6 years prior to 9/11.
6, yeah.
How do you think they could be? If you want to believe that the World Trade Center was outfitted with bombs, well, they knew about World Trade Center being a target 5 years ago. And if we go by the narrative that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed uses, and by the way, before he was tortured, he gave an interview to an Al Jazeera reporter in 2002, him and Ramzi bin al-Sheikh. So they weren't tortured yet. And I've interviewed the guy who wrote the book, Nick Fielding, who's friends with Yosri Fuda, who met them and said, yeah, we did this.
It's like,
and the intelligence agencies knew about these guys mid-90s.
I mean, look, Millennium Plot. Why is Ahmed Rassam taking bombs to LAX? Well, the authorities want you to think that, well, they're just going to bomb the airport. No, they're going to get on board planes. So if that's happening in the West Coast, gee.
What do you think is happening on the East?
Yeah.
Why do you think James Woods, who you mentioned, saw Muhammad Atta? Because he was seen at Atlanta, right? I think Atlanta, Nelson. He was in Atlanta months prior to 9/11.
They use Atlanta a lot. Georgia was used a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of movement through there, yeah.
And
even with the Israeli moving companies. Sorry.
Right, no. Now you're going into exactly.
Yeah, I don't want to get into that, but it's true.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, Israeli moving front company art student ring. Where were they? It just so happened to be in the same spots as Al Qaeda and the hijackers. Same spots. That's all.
Turn all of Afghanistan and
can't speak too much truth here,
Pakistan,
Nelson.
So I don't care all of it into a glass parking lot. What?
True.
Huh?
Yeah. We have people like
But it was an easy answer. The way that went down, okay, the way that went down was very movie script like. It was made for television. True. It was in that sweet spot where the internet was alive, but video content was highly compressed. It wasn't widely available. The internet was more than just social media, and certainly we hadn't gotten to apps yet, right? Hadn't gotten to apps yet. So you knew you were going to get shots of everything, from the planes to the explosion, especially in New York City, where the most densely populated city in the world, people constantly having cameras. They knew they were going to get that shot there. Now with DC, it's interesting because there's another heavily populated city, but there are 70 plus videos that show something somewhere. Forget about the surveillance videos. Okay, well, is Jason questioning that? Oh my God, it's so controversial. Just saying that the videos exist. We've never seen them.
I wonder why. You're talking about the McGuire Declaration, the document, which I'll quickly show real quick. Right, this is the declaration that was filed under a FOIA request by Bingham, Scott Bingham, and as you can see here, this is that declaration. And you could see it says Jacqueline McGuire was an FBI agent out of Washington, D.C. that was that was investigating the attacks at the Pentagon and Shanksville. And as you could see, that she does name like other videos and stuff, but it does, and she goes into detail. And I'll put this in the description for you to read so that everybody can read it. And it just shows it's like out of the 13 videotapes, which did show the Pentagon crash site, 12.
Nobody's going to read that. Nobody's going to read that.
Well, you know what? I have to have faith that somebody will.
I know.
Right? But I'm providing the information anyway, no matter what. But as you can see, I determined that only one videotape showed the impact of 77 into the Pentagon. And guess what happened? That one videotape nobody believed it anyway because it didn't show the whole plane going 500 miles an hour at the same time because it was a frame by frame rate.
Yeah, it wasn't a Hollywood panning shot from from across the field into the Pentagon and with a jib dolly and with the jib and everything else. So it was like, yeah, nobody can believe it.
And you would know about these guys. You work with cameras and stuff. By the way, they also interviewed the guy who pulled the videos. And I can't think of their names right now, but they interviewed them, and they talked about the different date at the bottom of the video, September 12th, and the Truth Movement said, "Oh, you see, this happened September." No, that's the date that they ripped the video from.
So how could they not fucking hello?
I mean, God's sakes.
Yeah.
Never seen them. And last year we got
Scott
a
Pennington.
new
That was
video
one. Scott Pennington was one.
Of one of the planes hitting the Second World Trade Center. So I'm just saying that the vast majority of information was managed in a way that probably couldn't be done now. And the other thing about today is video editing software, and people are so good now that I still see these fake people send me these fake videos from over a decade ago. The video they didn't want you to see of something. They're terrible, right? They're awful. But these days, they wouldn't be as awful, and they'd be a lot harder to debunk. All right.
He's right. But listen, I've said it time and again. I didn't need video to know what happened at the Pentagon. 100 somewhat people who were in the vicinity of Arlington City saw a plane descend over the Ronald Reagan International Airport, over that freeway, I forgot the name of the freeway, and head right into the Pentagon. Not only that, we had plenty of plane debris. And still, to this day, Jason, I have people telling me 22 years later that all those people aligned, that they might even be crisis actors, and that all that plane debris was magically just implanted under tons of debris at the Pentagon, like the landing gear. All that was actually done in broad daylight, and nobody saw this. And if there's other video out there that show a plane in the Pentagon, I want to know how many people in the Truth Movement who are no planers would actually believe that and say, "Oh, you know what? That's the government showing that, they put the plane in there." They wouldn't believe it because they have it in their head that they go down this route and they can't admit their mistakes, or that they're afraid they might agree with official narrative.
By the way, the name of the gate technicians were Brian Austin and Steve Pennington.
Steve, thank you, Ed. Thank you. That's right.
They worked with Radion Corporation.
Oh, is that right?
And that was the employer was Radian Incorporated, and it's now called DRS Radian. He was the
thank
maintenance chief.
Thank you for that.
Right.
Yeah.
We did our 15, 16-minute rant of the day before we get into the video, but here it is. I'm gonna jump to it. Let's get to that fabled enemies sweet spot. Let's see.
Creative abilities on that morning.
Here it is. Right
I saw
here.
fabled enemies.
We're gonna do the whole warnings and war game section. That's what we need to do.
Yeah, we probably should just get to the.
Sorry. Guys.
Yeah, you want me to fast forward or something?
Yeah, because this is the area I think you already covered already.
Yeah, it's not relevant to the 20.
Right. So
yeah, get to the part where he finally gets a flight 23 because we don't want to keep doing this. Yeah,
So,
before that,
right.
before
that.
Yeah, right before he gets to you see Tim Minton. No, forward, no. Go back, go forward.
Go forward.
Right about there.
Right,
right
about here.
Right there. Yes.
Right here.
Yes.
Airlines aircraft also had pre-placed weapons on them. All right, this is a setup from all around.
Yeah, pause.
A U.S.
says pause right there. Okay, what he just talked about right there was the Time Magazine inside job. This is and I covered this on Boston Logan 9/11 more in depth as I read the whole thing. But Jason's not pointing out that this is really specific. I mean, this is on Logan Airport, and he just wondered, why they won't show release video of the airport. Well, based upon those anomalous details, which could be hijackers getting in, boarding in as other ways besides as passengers, that would give you a reason why they wouldn't want to give you the video, release the security video. But yet the reasons are right there in front of him, and he's just over his head, completely, not seeing it.
Yeah, this is the point I was raising
Yeah,
before.
on this article, they talk about that they were already questioning, the FBI is questioning catering people at the airport and all that. Like Hussein al-Husseini, John Doe number 2, because this is the same airport that they're pointing out. So this article is not attributed to JFK Airport, even though this is what's going to segue into.
He's right there.
Yeah,
he's right there.
He's right there.
Look like inside jobs. Sources tell Time that U.S. officials are investigating whether the hijackers had accomplices deep inside the airport's secure areas.
Well, don't want to leave security video.
Like 20.
God forbid.
Hello? Gee, I wonder why.
The funny thing is, there is video.
Yeah.
And us three in this panel actually have access to additional video at the Pentagon, at Dulles, that the public hasn't seen yet. It's out there. It's out there.
3.
Yeah.
As bad as things were on Tuesday, there is a possibility that they could have been even worse.
There was some kind of an altercation involving 3 men described by a Port Authority of New York and New Jersey police source as Middle Eastern in appearance. They attracted the suspicions of the gate staff boarding that flight.
They had already gotten on the plane.
They're asked to leave the aircraft. They refuse to get off. The airline, following its normal procedures, according to this police source, calls the police, which immediately dispatch an emergency service team. So now you have a squad of heavily armed officers that are coming toward the airplane. And when they get there, the men have vanished. The gate staff can't find them.
It matches with the type of flights, the transcontinental flights that were hijacked in the other 4 instances. Another disturbing fact, if indeed there was an altercation and these men felt they had a case to make and were being treated unfairly, you can't imagine they would have disappeared from the airport. They would have stayed around and pled their case with the police.
It is extraordinarily unusual to have an airline, after it has boarded passengers, be so suspicious that it's going to ask these customers to get off the airplane.
Let me just stop this. I would be remiss if I didn't say, I was able to do this film. The only reason I was able to do this film was because of Alex Jones. Okay, that this is the first time I'd broken away from the Loose Change guys. Needed somebody to produce this. And their tagline is tomorrow's news today. Okay, tomorrow's news. This TMZ investigative piece just came out 15 years later. Now, what you're looking at is an interview that Lauer, and by the way, there's more. We're going to continue with United 23. We're going to do this chapter because it's so damn important. Okay. Mind-blowing. It took 15 years for the media to even look at this. And this is from the week of 9/11. And there's so much more. And meanwhile, Bill Maher, so I can't believe people for the last 20 years didn't say nothing.
All right, Jason, 2 different subjects here. He's talking about World Trade Center 7. And we're talking about additional hijacked planes.
I told you, but see, that's the issue. It's Barr. Bill Maher's. He's really pissed off about that. I mean, and I can understand to some degree when you hold certain people that they should be, quick to it. But when you're offering them this big cult conspiracy behind it, they're not gonna look into your stuff. But but the thing is this. He said, this on the week of 9/11. No, Jason, this news report has a date. Where you got this news report, I have to wonder, because from the stories of Loose Change, we're told that you bought a lot of news archives on VHS from eBay because there were people who had just recorded all the freaking news. Okay, well, I would imagine maybe this came from somebody who was recording NBC News straight for several hours, maybe all day, And you're saying within a week. Okay. Because this report here from Tim Minton from NBC with Matt Lauer is from September 13th, the morning of. And there's a lot of things going on that day. Like, for instance, the airports are about to reopen. And
That's right.
Despite that, what Norman Mineta is about to give the clearance, there's lots of people, especially NBC News, that are taking issue and saying, "Oh, hold up. You may not want to open up those airports. We don't. These new added measures you're just quickly putting in are just old measures we've been talked about and have used before. You may need to do something. Your entire security could be completely compromised. This may not just be the passenger security issue." And boy, were those people right. And even Andrea Mitchell was one of those people. She's a big, establishment, hack, and she was right. But yeah, that happened. And so the point being is that how do you get this report? Because, he isn't the only one that reports it. Later on that day, Dan Rather talks about it, a couple other reports. But when they talk about it, all of a sudden, 5 hours later, after airports are starting to take off, planes are starting to take off, the airports in New York and in New Jersey start shutting down, especially at JFK Airport, which, yet again, for some reason, they get reports that there's hijacking attempts and there's people arrested with pilot IDs and all kinds of airport, what they call the paraphernalia in one report, but all this disguised gear. A woman is also arrested between LaGuardia and New Jersey Airport. Even a woman in LaGuardia as well too. And we even find out reports. Some of the news reports even indicated that they arrested the people at LaGuardia Airport because they were seen at that airport on 9/11 trying to get through security, and they beeped and they turned around and left. And then they were seen at the airport again. So, you would be wondering, if you're looking for this whole thing with Flight 23 and the same airports being shut down again. Well, golly gee, you think they may have caught them? Because this is something TMZ didn't do. They didn't indicate that. This is a whole other door opener. They don't even want to even reveal how vulnerable things were. They'll tell you that, yeah, there may have been a dozen or so planes on 9/11, but they don't even want to remind you, like, yeah, but they still kept going.
Yeah,
right.
It was like a take two.
Yeah.
I keep in mind too, this would have been September 13th. It would have been at a time when the security was hyper alerted. So when you just had a biggest terrorist attack in U.S. history, and now you're reopening 2 days later, and so your security is going to be incredibly enhanced, incredibly present. And you just mentioned the emergency services team responding to that incident. Funny he uses emergency services team, because that's what I was a member of when I was at Travis Air Force Base. So I was in the military. And they called us the emergency services team. So we were the guys who actually stormed aircraft and stuff. But it was I didn't know they had that in the civilian sector, which I thought was kind of interesting. So it's very, very you would have had a very heightened sense of security on those days. So the chances of catching more people would have been much greater.
Much greater, right? That's a really good point, by the way. And they did, like Nelson points out, they did. And by the way, all those people deported, so we couldn't investigate them.
So I question you, Jason. Did you have news reports at your disposal? Because you had these on 9/13. I know what date this is. Did you have news reports at your disposal from the afternoon of September 13th indicating hijackers were being shut down and closed? And if you knew about those reports, why have you never put that in any of your films?
What? Hey, Bill.
Exactly.
And then they tagline it at the end with, there could have been a sixth plane or a seventh. Hey, pay attention. That's
what I'm asking.
Showed you the one looking like it was coming from Alaska as the sixth plane. And I just showed you 2 Delta aircraft that had weapons on them as 7 and 8.
Oh, Nelson, that brings up that story. You know this more than I do. because it was
Yeah.
brought to you my attention. The guy celebrating in the Canadian plane with the bottle of champagne.
Al Hamdi or Al Haiti. Al
Yes.
Haiti.
It was something-
That's connected. We're going to talk about that because that's all connected to Nabil Marab. That's all part of Nabil Marab. He had his phone number on him.
Right, all right.
Yeah,
Right,
we don't
right,
want to
right.
go into that, but I think the point you'd want to go into is because you just said Delta, is that Delta 1989.
Yeah, exactly.
Why would you and then it's like you have these things at your disposal. Well, then you also have grounded on 9/11 at your disposal. Okay, but you went ahead and you told everybody that Flight 93, landed in Cleveland and was mistaken as Delta 1989 because there was a rumor of it being a hijack. And you switched the dates and you added this bogus idea that there was 200 people, the equivalence of all 4 planes hijacked on 9/11, basically on this Flight 93 that's landing in Cleveland, that everybody's getting offloaded into a NASA facility. God forbid what else happens. But of course, that's where you get the idea with Art Olivier when he comes up with his movie Operation Terror.
Oh,
that's basically the idea. He's ripping it off from basically that. So you get that. But if you look at the report and the grounded on 9/11, they indicate that that the cops showed up and they said they had unruly passengers on that plane. And that plane took off from Boston Logan the same time, right in between Flight 11 and 175. Okay, so why would you ignore that? That's a 6. Well, there's plenty more. But, you cherry pick that to facilitate a hoax. Because what was really happening was that the reason why people got confused is because momentarily, as Delta 1989 was a suspicious aircraft because of unruly passengers, it was flying alongside near Flight 93, which was already known. They already knew something was up. So this is why they had a mix-up. And, all of a sudden, Flight 93 turns around, where Delta ended up going straight and goes into Cleveland. So that was part of the mix-up. And it shows that eloquently on the History Channel, grounded on 9/11. And you had that to your disposal to figure that out, that's what the mix-up is. And you didn't. You threw away a 6th plane. So now you're trying to capitalize on the 5th. Be honest.
Right, and it goes to a point in favor of fringe conspiracy theories.
Yes.
Showed you Myers telling you they fought many phantoms that day. What planet am I living on? I'm in the post-truth world. I'm in the cartoon verse, where a couple of multi-millionaires can sit there and wax philosophically about the other plane on 9/11.
By the way, Jason, the Phantoms were basically in the hopes of diverting the defense jets to jets that didn't exist, not that the hijacked planes were Phantoms.
All right, come on. Let's get with it. About 20 minutes. We're going premium, redvoicemedia.com/Jason, redvoicemedia.com/uncensored. $10 a month, $100. Share the news I want to talk about is important, but this is as important as it gets. Why is this as important as it gets? Because, again, we're still under this lie and this guise of terror. We're still in the Middle East. We're just expanding the police state and the draconian institutions of enslavement here and abroad.
What's what happens when you do building worship?
The Patriot.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
You don't go look at the Germany and the Hamburg cell and everywhere else and what else we did afterwards at 9/11.
I think this is a huge point you're raising, because this is, where the misconception about, we got to prove what happened at Ground Zero to know what institutions are involved in 9/11. No, you don't. In fact, there's no suspects named with Ground Zero. You can allude to Larry Silverstein or the Jewish conspiracy or that the U.S. Army but you don't know it. I'll tell you what we do know. It's through the public record. The CIA, the NSA, Israelis, Saudi operatives were monitoring who? The hijackers inside the United States and abroad that Nelson just brought up with Germany. Now, if you look into like the long history of intelligence, hey, guess what? Now we got names to go along with that. Something you don't got at ground zero. Stop looking at ground zero and nowhere else. It's fine. You want to prove that the World Trade Center came down by explosives, which I happen to think maybe, but I'm not the right person for that because that's not my area of study. Go to like Chandler or David Chandler or Wayne Costi. They know more than I do regarding that. My area of study is the intelligence services and geopolitics, something that Nelson also.
And your expertise is 1993.
Right, exactly. Something that, by the way, that's a whole nother argument.
Yeah, but that's
93.
because, but that focuses on the building. That focuses
Exactly.
on the intent and everything. So that's
Right.
where you're an expert on.
Right. So, right, but I don't consider myself an expert anyway. But anyway, regardless, look into the intricacies involving intelligence that's always aligned with fundamentalist groups. This goes back even before Al Qaeda. Abu Nidal, anyone? So, and do I need to mention this Jara family? That this could go on 5 hours.
React stand up when you figure out they lied to you up and down about 9/11? Does Homeland Security stand up? Not saying we shouldn't have border control. I mean, we had it before Homeland Security. We didn't need Deutschland Security for that. Let's start growing up.
Yes, I agree with everything you just said there.
Let's keep going here.
Yeah. Tim Minter.
We got a phone call from a law enforcement officer who was on vacation, was in the United Airlines terminal at the time. As soon as he approached, they walked out of the terminal, and he looked over. He described them as Middle Eastern in both appearance and dress. Not sure what that means, but that was his description. He said when they left the terminal through the glass doors, he saw them meet a third man, and they then left.
All right, the dress he's talking about now, because TMZ, thank you, TMZ, and Harvey Lewin is talking about the burqa-wearing individual. That's what he's referring to. That's my guess.
Inside the bags, officials found Al-Qaeda instruction sheets. But false identification prevented investigators from ever locating the bag's true owners.
And that right there is from History Channel's Ground 9/11.
What's that?
And they were the first one to cover Flight 23, and the only mistake they made was saying that it was Newark Airport rather than JFK.
Would be found the exact same way.
There have also been reports of luggage that did not make the.
Now it's left. See, that's all it covers of Flight 23.
One of the alleged perpetrators, and this is being reported by the Boston Globe, and contained within the luggage were supposed to be Arabic language flight training manuals, as well as videotapes pertaining to operating an aircraft.
Then we have that mysterious suitcase
Mike Rivero,
with all of the hijackers' names and all of this incriminating evidence that is supposedly taken by one of the hijackers to the airport. Why, if they are planning on a suicide attack, would they even bother to pack a suitcase?
And by the way,
this is really easy to answer. To make it look like they are not going there without any luggage, which raised suspicion by security officials.
Hello. Yeah, it was all disguised.
That is just obvious.
Yeah. Mike didn't think that one out too well.
Right. If I'm Ed, would that make sense? If I'm going on a coast to coast trip, I'm bringing luggage because I'm going on a long range trip. I'm staying somewhere in a hotel or whatever, and I'm staying.
In those days, absolutely. Today, because of the cost of extra baggage,
right. Good point.
I went back home to visit family, and I actually wore my baggage. I layered up in multiple clothes to save money on
good idea.
Carry on and stuff. It was crazy.
Right.
But yeah, but those days, absolutely, you'd have baggage and luggage. And
right. And this is not to raise awareness because they're Arab, right? And they're traveling in groups. They want to make it look like, hey, we're on a business trip or something. But if you're going to San Francisco or Los Angeles and you don't have luggage, red lights coming on, right? I mean, I think that's obvious.
When James Woods talks about this, and a lot of this information wasn't available, the James Woods stuff, because we didn't have the Dark Overlord documents. That's now 5 years old. That's 2018. That's a story that never got let's just act like it doesn't exist. Let's act like all these trials didn't happen. Let's act like there isn't still a ton of classified documents on 9/11. Let's act like
Stop right there.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I know
And
where
we
you're
had
going.
Yeah. How many years are going to go by, Jason, before we talk about Operation Encore?
Thank you.
Yeah, for
Thank
the
you.
missile that hit the Pentagon.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's right. All these things. So how did everybody get into chemtrails, into, crisis actor here, crisis actor there? God forbid, every single other stupid conspiracy trend afterwards. It's like, right. All these years have wasted to look at these documents, to try to put teams together to do something, and keep putting film content, storytelling, because there's a lot of storytelling once you dig into it.
There sure is. Now, just to follow up, Ed, let me pick it back on your turn. I have read a lot of the operation. There's 15,000. I initially stated it was 5. I found out it was 15,000 pages. I'm at 7,000. I'm barely halfway there. And I found some really illuminating things on those files. But it answered a lot of questions in regards to speculation with Saudi Arabian operatives inside the United States. We assumed that they were involved. Well, now we know. It's now a fact. Did the media report this? For 1 week, they did. In fact, the first media outlet that reported on this, because when I read it, I made the video at 4:30 in the morning. And because I said, oh my God, I can't believe it. NorthJersey.com. Ever heard of it? No, I didn't. Basically, that little press release later became 3 weeks later a story for a week. It was covered by ABC. It was covered by CBS. CNN, I don't think covered much of it.
No, I don't think the other ones did.
FBI gave a press release. They have to when they release information, but they didn't, they gave out a little bit. That's it, a little bit. And those really researchers on the journalistic end, well, they read it. They read whatever's press released by the Department of Justice, and they did a story, but it died quick. Let me ask you, Nelson, Ed, did the 9/11 Truth ever report the latest operations on Encore files?
No.
Right. That's right. Nobody did.
No, they're not even covering. They're not making that even a big ordeal that you have Anwar al-Awlaki looking right at Omar al-Bayoumi, right there having some weird festive gathering in some San Diego apartment. My God.
Not only that, but they were made aware of these documents by us, and they still haven't done anything with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Now, let me give you one example, Jason, right? Which was mind-blowing to me. There is a document by an informant to the FBI who was at the Saudi the Los Angeles Mosque, King Fahd Mosque.
Yeah.
Run by Fahad al-Thumairy.
Yeah.
This informant said that he was privy to a phone call that originated out of Malaysia, where the Malaysian summit meeting happened, before the meeting even happened, and said that there were 2 brothers coming to the United States. They were Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Mihdhar. Who knew about this? Fahad al-Thumairy and 2 of associates of the Saudi foreign and terrorist minister, and his name was Muassed al-Jarrah, who was actually put in that position by the Bush administration. He comes in, and he basically is the coordinator of Fahad al-Thumairy, Omar al-Bayoumi, Osama Bastan, and all the operatives that gave logistic and funding to Khalid al-Mihdhar, Nawaf al-Hazmi, and later Hani Anjur in Arizona. Okay? While this is going on, this is all documented by an informant, not 1, but 2.
Yeah. And there's a Millennium Plot link too, because Rassam has phone contacts that are linked to Thumairy.
That's right. And so you'll see that this connection not leads back to previous terrorist attacks, but all the way back to maybe even Abu Nidal. And I'm not going into all that because that takes so much time and stuff, but we'll keep it recent. the 93 bombing. Okay. That wasn't Al Qaeda. These are freelance terrorists. But later on, bin Laden grows his army under the full awareness of the intelligence agencies. Nothing's done to stop it. Even when throughout the mid-90s, you bring this up and you basically say, yeah, you know, they had assassination plots. They sure did. Clinton knocked down every single one, said, nope. Not going to take this man seriously. He doesn't deserve, you know, our attention. Later on, he's building an army. Everyone's warning him. Hey, listen, this guy's building an army. And bin Laden, here's the real conspiracy. Bin Laden is not secret with his threats. He's the opposite. He's telling you he's attacking the United States. Everyone knows. So all this stuff that you bring up, Jason, well, Condoleezza Rice, oh, we didn't know they were going to use planes. They knew back in 95.
Yeah.
But Jacob Plot.
We know that. Yeah.
Right? So the conspiracy is not that the government's hiding the fact. They're making it known. Bin Laden is making it known. They are going to attack you using planes. Now, the conspiracy is this, Jason, is that the government is saying we didn't have the information. The intelligence operations are saying we shared the information when that wasn't true. The truth was the government only knew a little bit, but they knew something was coming, did nothing about plane security or INS security, just let it go through. These guys came walking in with the full knowledge of the intelligence community and let the attacks happen.
Yeah.
And now you bring up into the subject, which is the most important. We're talking about the reaction to the 9/11 attacks, which is the ripple effect that we're speaking about today. The invasions of Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya. Now we're talking because that involves who? The real governments who benefited from the 9/11 attacks. Israel, Saudi Arabia, the Gulf, and the United States. Now we're talking. Now let's have that discussion because that talks about specifics. But if you don't believe in hijackers and you don't believe in hijacked planes and you start propagating these theories, guess what happens? The public turns you off, says you're all nut jobs when you're not. Not all of you are. No one's going to take you seriously. And in default, people like us suffer from those consequences because we are actually saying, yeah, there were conspiracies. There was something involving those governments, but no one's going to listen to us because we're automatically seen as nuts that Alex Jones portrays. That's why I'm such a huge critic of Alex Jones. He has done immeasurable, irreversible damage. That's why I hate him. I hate Alex Jones for what he did. He is still doing it. Even though it's come out, he's a liar. Come out in court. He does it for entertainment. That's what the civil suit with his wife, Kelly Jones, right?
Yeah, he couldn't even pay for her glasses today. I've seen the post from his ex-wife. Not even paying, support for his kids. Yeah.
That's the reason why we hate Alex Jones, because he's the godfather of all this information, which hurt us, not you or anybody else. Well, you know what? He did hurt you. He did hurt you because I happen to think that you are a little bit tired of the repetitive non-response from the rational community in 9/11, and you're not getting anywhere with the truther community. I know you're not. I know you're not. And I think you want more. That's why we're doing this video.
Yeah, we've been treated like children, and we've largely accepted it.
Or if they're just packing the suitcase to look like they're checking luggage, just throw clothes in there. Why put a Koran? Why put flight manuals? Why put all this incriminating information if it's supposedly going to get burned up? And then magically, amazingly enough, this one suitcase doesn't make it onto the connecting flight to New York. And it's just there in baggage handling, waiting to be discovered and found.
If the passengers...
Mike, we didn't need the information on the luggage. We had the information in Germany. We knew who they were. There are a few people now, I would say, that cover this. Just us in this room. And maybe Ben and Eric, Sean Russell, Darren Harvey, and past individuals like Paul Thompson and Fenton and Ray Nowakowski and John Duffy. But that's it. Robbie Martin, Abby Martin, them too. But that's it. That's that's the real crime. The hidden crime in 9/11 is that I can name maybe 10 reputable people that talk about this stuff I can name you 100 that don't, that actually talk about the real, cracky, kooky stuff.
Three of
That
those
cover up
10 are in this room.
Right. That's hard. That's the real hidden crime of 9/11. And God's sakes, man, the CIA were on these guys in Germany. In Germany, trying to, and the two guys that Nelson brings up in his films, Marmoon Darkanzali and Mohammed Haydar Zamar, look into those guys' backgrounds. Syrian run gunning connection with secular Arab fundamentalists. And by the way, who actually coordinates those groups and affiliates with those groups? Look into the Israeli, what was that one group that masked themselves as Arabs? I always forget that.
Oh, Mr. Arvim.
Mr. Arvim, right. Yeah. I never hear anything like that out there in the public sphere. But that's what Ali Al-Jarrah, that's the cousin of Ziad Jarrah, Hezbollah connection, secular Arab fundamentalist groups. Well, he was working with the Mossad for 25 years. His brother, Joseph Al-Jarrah, was helping him for 10 of those years. And this guy, Ziad Jarrah, is part of the 9/11 planes operation? Now we're talking, right? Now but if you don't believe in hijackers, none of this information exists. And you don't look into it.
Used false identification. Why wouldn't the other hijackers?
Based on my personal belief and based on the events of that morning, the decision to halt airplanes, in all likelihood, probably precluded other attacks.
Atta and 3 others would do dry runs of the attacks before 9/11. Actor James Woods and others on the plane even filed separate reports to the FAA. Again, nothing was done.
I was on a flight. Without going into the details of what made me suspicious of these 4 men, although it would have been blatantly obvious to the most casual observer, I took it upon myself to go to the flight attendant and ask to speak to the pilot of the plane. The first officer came out. I reported to him that I felt that the 4 men, and I said, can you look over my shoulder and see who I'm talking about? And he said, yeah. I said, I think they're going to hijack this plane. I mean, everything they're doing, and I explained to him these details, which I've been asked to keep private until whatever jurisdiction, whatever trials may take place.
No trials took place. No.
I didn't even need James Wood's story to know about this much. Nelson and Ed know what I'm talking about here. You had 2 Saudis back in 2000 that actually was on a plane to go to a dinner, a Saudi-funded dinner in Washington, D.C., of all people. And I think it was a Delta Airlines. Could be wrong. I think it was Delta Airlines. Mohammed Al-Qatari, and another person
from Arizona. Yeah.
That's right. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And they went to the cockpit thinking it was the bathroom. Not once, but twice during the flight. And the flight attendant told them that it was a cockpit the first time. They still went in, tried to get into the cockpit, shaking the door and stuff. Right? It was a dry run. The FBI even admits this. And that's well before James Woods' story. You think that they heightened security then? No, they didn't.
And that was right coming to the peak of the millennium.
Correct. Right. You just saved me a conversation there. Now, one of those guys that was next to Qatari, Hamdan, actually was borrowing a car from a person who's a training camp advisor in Afghanistan to Al-Qaeda. That's a little bit too close to home for me, pal.
Trials took place. What jurisdiction? No, we set up black sites like Abu Ghraib and Gitmo, and then a bunch of bobbleheads.
Those aren't black sites, by the way. Black sites would be detention site green, detention site blue.
They're like in Europe, actually.
Yeah, they're not even in the United. They're in Egypt. They're in Germany. Switzerland. The countries that don't have.
Abu Ghraib was just a result of the Iraq War, man. That's a whole other.
That's right.
Really important scandal, but that's
They were
right. That's right.
Were enlightened and fighting the deep state, started defending Gitmo, and you basically blamed it on the boogeyman Bin Laden, and then his accomplice, who may or may not have been putting videos out last year, Al-Zawahiri, right? Somebody who's been killed like several times.
I covered that.
That was the guy, and then the big mustachioed plumber-looking dude.
Plumber?
That guy. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed.
Oh.
And that those aren't real trials. That's not reality.
Right.
And here we sit.
Yeah, there's a reason why there's no trials, Jason, is because they were tortured. And anything they said under torture cannot be used in court, even in a military tribunal. Now, I've interviewed Mark Fallon. I've interviewed Ken Jenkins, who wrote the Phoenix Memo. And they basically said that yes, whatever, even in a military tribunal, whatever they said basically can't be used in court. Now, maybe there's a reason why the CIA did that, is so that that even if they were telling the truth, you really couldn't believe it. Even if Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, you want to believe that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed told the truth. I think he did plan 9/11. But do we know it? No, because he said it under torture. But what you don't know, and what Ed and myself and Nelson knows, is that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and Ramzi bin al-Shibh, before they were captured, gave an interview with Yoshri Fruit of Al Jazeera. By the way, he has a channel on YouTube. He made a great series. We got too bad it's all in Arabic, but there's some that has English translate. Remarkable series. And they talked about Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, Ramzi bin al-Shibh meeting with Yoshri Fruit, telling him, yeah, we did this. Here's the conspiracy.
Yeah.
CIA,
and it was, he's like, yeah, he said it was 4 planes, it was 19 hijackers.
That's right.
All their brothers are in prison right now. They know. They're there, the facilitator will give into your narrative. Sure.
Remember, Khalid
that's why that's why he beheaded Daniel Pearl. To make them like, savage, you know.
Right, he's a savage, right?
This is what come, this is what happened to you.
Yeah.
They knew it was psychological, it was propaganda. You know?
That's right. That's right. But yeah, but there you have it. Now, that leads to the question: who are these guys on the 5th plane? Right? Look into the backgrounds of these people. That's all I got to say.
And again, Bill, I'm sure that your paths have crossed with James Woods. He would be an interesting guest. Talk to him about not only these other flights. Oh, look at that. Looks like there were another hijacking. So 9/11, something else going on in 9/11. But what was happening in preparation of 9/11?
Their behavior was such that I felt they were going to hijack the plane. I found out later that not only did he make a report, but the flight attendant also made a report of my suspicions to the FAA. And my friend Scott said to me, remember that flight you took in August? I said, yeah, I've been thinking about it all day. He said, well, maybe you should call the FBI. And I said, I'm sure they're being inundated, but I thought it over and I called the local office. 6:45 the next morning, I got a phone call that actually wakes me up, and they said, we want to talk to you about the flight that you took in August. I said, oh, did the manifest match of any of the flights yesterday and my flight? He said, well, we can't tell you that. I said, well, look, I'll get ready and I'll come down to the federal building. He said, we're outside your house. We'll just wait for you.
Wow, 7:15. So this is
6:45 in the morning. I said, and this is the only funny part of any of this. I said, how did you know where I lived? And there was a pause. He said, we're the FBI. We're the FBI. Thank you.
Yeah, we're the FBI. I mean, there were certain people that we not only knew who some of these hijackers were, they were working for us.
Like Ibad Salem. Yes, like Ibad Salem and his uncle KSM. Oh, that's right. It's Ramzi Youssef.
Oh, no, Jason. That is a huge charge on your part.
Yeah.
Right? If you have evidence to show that any of the 9/11 hijackers were working the FBI, I am begging you to contact me and give me that information. I want to know it. Because I will tell you what, I'll go further. I'll even make a video saying I need a lawyer that will take this information and join me in a court of law, and basically, we could actually maybe conduct an investigation and an internal investigation if the FBI worked with the 9/11 hijackers. That's a big charge, Jason. And you know what? You could get away with it on your platform. That's unfortunate because I couldn't do that because I would lose my audience because I built up the audience to respectability. I care about being right. But this doesn't help. And that's a huge. Imagine saying that. Oh,
sense.
So they came in and I said, look, I'm dying to know, were these the guys? And he said, well, we've had 36,000 tips in one day. And there's 2 of us, and we're going to be at your house all this morning, so you can do the math, but we can't tell you, So since then, I have identified for sure 2 of them as 2 of the terrorists, who actually were not on flight 11, but one was on flight 175 and one was on flight 77.
See, he talks about that. And you notice he talks about flight 11 because that's the flight that he was on in August just before the attacks. Okay?
And I've been told unofficially, not by the FBI, but by someone else,
Crisis actor?
a higher level of government, believe it or not, just through a coincidence, through a mutual friend, that all 4 of them were terrorists involved. As I explained to the FBI, they said, what was your first instinct? And aside from certain things like 4 guys getting on a transcontinental flight without any hand luggage, they said to me, you know, what did you think these guys were? I said, well, I thought they were either 4 law enforcement officers or 4 terrorists, in that they had that thing that guys who are undercover or on a mission have between each other.
So let me just stop it there. Again, pretty important stuff. Seymour Hersh also confirmed for him that that's a real story. He said that in court. I have a whole video called The Secret Testimony of James Woods that goes over the documentation that came out in 2018. So again, imagine, Bill, somebody was all over this 20 years ago.
That's more evidence that the hijackers had intelligence ties.
So right here, I feel like we got 10 minutes. The other targets here, this is the Paris Glendon clip. I think that we should put this out there because this shows you not only were there other planes, there were other targets that day.
Other swaps?
There were almost certainly other targets. Maryland's governor on the morning of 9/11 stated that his police department had received threats prior to the attack, not only against the targets that had been hit, but others.
That came in today? Pardon? You mentioned threats on Maryland facilities. Are these threats that came in today?
Yes.
Camp David.
The head of our state police, Dave Mitchell, received a list of 11 sites across the country that were targets. Supposedly this
Bojinka targets
prior to the explosions. Several of those sites.
Yeah, somebody probably went to the old filing cabinet, pulled out the Bojinka plot files, and went, oh yeah, here are the targets. Here they are. Put this out on the wire, and let people know these are potential targets based on this intelligence we gathered back in the day.
Now, if you want to play speculation on top of that, let me speculate. Could it be that these specific targets also involve members of the art student ring in Israel? We'll have to match that up.
Under attack.
Another target on that morning was Air Force One. Although it is never discussed, the perpetrators of the attack somehow got top secret codes that morning.
And Brian, what is the credible evidence?
Wait a minute. Hold.
What's that mean? I don't even know what that means.
Okay. I'm gonna share an article just really quick. I don't want to bore you to death, but there is an article.
The Angel article.
It talks about it's a Daily Mail article.
But the Angel is dead. What's it called?
Yeah. So here, you know exactly where I'm going. As we got over Gainesville, Florida, we got word from Jacksonville Center. They said, Air Force One, you have traffic behind you and basically above you that is descending into you. We are not in contact with them. They shut off their responder. And at that time, it kind of led us to believe that maybe someone was coming into Sarasota. They saw us take off. They just stayed high, and we are following us at this point. We have no idea what the capabilities of the terrorists were at this point. They speculated it was a terrorist plane. Tillman said he flew the specifically adopted Boeing 747 onto the Gulf of Mexico to see if the other plane would follow, right? When the other jet continued on its route, he was later told it was an airliner that had lost its transponder, which sends out an electronic identification signal, and the pilots had failed to switch to a new radio frequency. Tillman said the threat remained, and he received a message. We got word from the vice president and the staff that Angel was next. Angel being the classified call sign of Air Force One. Once we got into the Gulf and they passed to us that Angel was next, at that point, I asked the fighter support if an airliner was part of the attack, it would be good to have fighters on the wing to go ahead and take care of us. But they knew who the plane was. It had lost a transponder. It wasn't a terrorist plane. This information is out there. It's out there.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that it wasn't legit. It could have been legitimately targeted while it was in the air. It could have been, These people could have been operatives out there with Stinger missiles, anti-aircraft missiles, for what we know.
On the
we
ground.
don't know. Look at TWA 100.
Yeah, you're right. Right. But yeah, nevertheless, but he's not being specific. That's the problem.
Yeah, and of course we'll cut him some slack because he doesn't know anything about the longboat observer story.
Oh, okay. No, that's a good point. That's a good point.
These planes were some distance from Air Force One after all.
The excuse was that, quote, we do not discuss, we do not discuss intelligence information. Air Force One has been said to be a target in the past during President Clinton's trip to Bosnia during his first term, where they stopped in Aviao and switched out into 3 transport planes. Similarly, they were escorted by fighter jets, as they have in the past, while it is not routine. The White House insisting that the evidence was, and thus the zigzag flight path from Florida to Louisiana. The Air Force is insisting that the evidence is provable and credible that the aircraft and the White House were targets.
Ari Fleischer, the White House press secretary, would be pressed on this issue.
Florida. If you have a threat to Air Force One, it seems as though you're raising an additional threat that perhaps we don't know about.
I'm sorry? Raising an additional threat?
Involving one of those planes, four planes, Ari, is that where the credible threat, or can you say, are we talking about something totally different?
You're asking me, in essence, what the source of information is. And I think the American people...
How have we accounted for those 4 planes and what their targets were? Is there, which by deduction, you would assume there is something else that we're talking about targeting Air Force One.
There
we
was...
make that assumption?
I'm not going to lead you any further as to speculating about what was the nature of the threat to Air Force One.
They had the secret codes that day. What else do I need to say? So, this is a Daily Mail accompanying 6 unsolved mysteries of 9/11's 5th plane, United 23, burqa-clad man in first class, Arabs demanding the jet take off before it was grounded, and box cutters found in a nearby aircraft, which were on the wrong plane. The wrong plane.
Mm-hmm.
Could it be that it wasn't a wrong plane? It was going to be a potential hijacking of that plane?
It was the right plane at the wrong time.
Right. That's right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So, again, guys, they lied to you about 9/11.
Yeah. So he's saying that these are fake targets, fake to make it look. But okay, but why fake it all up for the omission report to filter it out?
I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, that's
why even have the weapons on the plane?
Yeah, why even care about the visas? That's how Saudi Arabia is involved. Well, no, you're not. You're absolving them if you're just saying they're out there to move around and then not even do the hijacking. Right, they're not involved.
Right,
don't have anything there. You don't even need to do that. Why do they need a backstory? Just give good evidence that they're at the airport, and they don't even offer that. Not enough chain of evidence, but you know what I'm saying.
Right. Reminds me of that the Saudi passport that the truthers say, oh, they found this passport in Manhattan. Well, if they wanted to blame Iraq for the attacks on 9/11, why not just make that passport of Saddam al-Sistami an Iraqi passport?
I mean, Ramzi Youssef was doing it for them.
Yep. Right. That's another good point. Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's a really good point. Right. Because they wanted to show the connection to Iraq and terrorism. And who's behind that? Well, Israel and the neocons in the Bush White House.
I mean, Ayman al-Zawahiri saluted our troops when we went to Iraq. It's good. Keep it up. Take out that dictator. Yeah.
We're the baddies. We're the baddies. The boy idiot had nothing to do with it. We needed a real investigation. We never got one. The people that helped pull this off and propagate the lies surrounding it, they're still in charge. Okay? And now we're at a point where somebody who doesn't, love him or hate him, when Donnie T was recently asked about Saudi Arabia's involvement in 9/11, and there is, again, that consulate funding, that's real. There's many layers to this. Trump said, we still don't know who did 9/11, and it's a shame. We should by now. So Trump's supposedly going to be indicted today. It's almost 9 a.m. on the East Coast. In fact, maybe we should check. Let's do it live. It'll be the top story of the Daily Mail. If you
I think this is pretty much done with now, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think you're right. That's right.
Yeah,
over.
yeah. See, that's
So-
my whole thing. It's like,
Yeah.
you can't even solve 9/11. You can't even get anything straight, but somehow he's an expert on everything else now to be a social critic.
I stay away from that anyway. But
Yeah,
the point made here is that even with the Trump, and this was brought up by Nelson the other day, and repeatedly, is that even with the Trump administration supposedly on your side, because he actually questions the 9/11 attacks, did the 9/11 Truth Movement do just that? Nope. Silence. Silence. And now with the new revelations coming out, which has been more than at any point except for 2001, 2002, we've had more released information regarding the TMZ article and Operation Encore Files. Truth Movement cover that? And that's the problem. Even if they came out.
And they won't,
Yeah, why is that, Ed?
because it's too much. Then they have to acknowledge that everything they've been pushing all these years has been problematic. They have to start back to ground zero without going back to ground zero.
Without going back to ground, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, this is a problem that's facing us to the current day, and that I wish we could have had the movement of 2005-06 today. We could have reached a lot more people.
I
but
tried.
yeah, you guys did.
We could have done something. Not let the the war on terror escalate to further what it is now.
Yeah, that's a good point, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm hoping, Jason, that I'll let Nelson and Ed opine their thoughts after mine. Is that I hope you don't see us as detractors or enemies, because I don't see you that way. I think that I have hope in you that that I think you're tired of the repetitious arguments put forth by the 9/11 fringe community movement, and that you want something more. This video proves it, I think, for me, the video that you made. And I'm gonna watch your response video too when you see the film. And if you ever want to reach out to me, I'm open. I don't have you blocked on Twitter or anywhere else. You can reach out to me. I'd like to hear from you. And I think that there's a conversation to be had. But there are some modifications along the way that you need to do. And one of them is Alex Jones. He's a cancer to anything he touches. No matter what he's done for you in the past, I think he's actually your worst enemy. You may not see it now, but he is. We are not your enemy, and we never were. And so I'll let you guys finish at the end.
I don't know. I think I've said what I needed to say, because we covered everything we needed to. For anybody else just watching this, all I can say is, watch the TMZ special, share it, and if you want to, watch my film Bojinka Maximum if you want to share that too, even though it's a bit overwhelming. But that's it. It's like all we can do is this video, and put it out public. If he wants to watch it, he can watch it. Maybe some of his his friends, his closer people will watch it. Maybe they'll have maybe they'll get him to watch it, or maybe they'll be able to exchange some of this information to him and challenge him.
Would you be willing to talk with Jason if he wanted to?
Sure.
Ed?
Yeah, I've actually met Jason a few times. I have nothing against him. Great guy. I just want him to grow. I want him to actually. I know he's looking. It looks like it, and he's not somebody to be confined to particular cliques, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So he is a bit more independent, more of an independent thinker. So I think he's definitely in a position where he'd be more willing to accept new information that is going to be more difficult to digest. But I think he's definitely up for the task.
I agree. And Nelson, I'm going to share your Bajika Macam film in the description, and everybody can watch the film in chapters or watch the whole film at once. But nevertheless, that'll be the end of the video. I thank you, Ed, Nelson, for joining in and giving me your thoughts on the subject. And hopefully, Jason Bermas, you can reach out to any one of us, and hopefully we'll have that conversation in the future. As for the rest of you, have a good afternoon. Thank you for chiming in.